Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it, as always. And of course, as always, I have the most fascinating guest with me today. You are just going to love listening to her story, and she has a lot of interesting things to share with us today. Her name is Michelle Henderson, and she is a certified spiritual advisor, psychic, medium, spiritual artist, which is something I want to hear a lot more about that, a healer, coach, and host of a live weekly podcast called Michelle's Inspiration Hour. As a former teacher, educational diagnostician, and behavior analyst who taught children with autism for over 30 years, she wrote 2 books, one titled A 3-Element Social Skill Program, Instruction, Drama, and Technology. And her second book, which has been out for about a year now, is titled Spiritual Nurturing for Intuitive Children. She now helps to guide others through their own journey and pathway to spiritual insight and spiritual healing. Michelle, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I just love that introduction. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. And just thank you for being here. I think, your story is so fascinating and you're just so interesting. So I just can't wait to get started. So let's just tell the audience how you went from being a teacher to now being a spiritual guide, psychic and medium. And I especially love that part about the spiritual artist.
Right. And, I believe everybody is on their own spiritual journey. And I wanted, I always say it really started when I was a child, because whenever I was a child, I could feel the energy. I think we all do a little bit, feel a little bit different. And I really did feel different. It wasn't only the red hair that I had, that was a minority back then, but also I could feel the energy. I was an empath. I was an emotional wreck. I was very sensitive. And I just knew that, I went alone a lot of times in my bedroom. Things I could not see. And whenever I tried to reach out with my parents, they go, "Oh, that's your imagination," or, I don't know what that is, that type of thing. So, so I didn't really pay attention to it, but I still used it in my daily life. So I just knew what I needed to do. I used that intuitiveness. I prayed a lot saying, I hope I'm not going crazy, which I was not. But anyway, so then I had my spiritual awakening in my early 20s. And when I say that, that means spirit was all for saying, okay, we want you to come and work for us. And I started hearing the voices and I thought, okay, I am definitely going crazy now. So I found another psychic medium in town and I went to her and I said, can you help me? Give me some knowledge so I don't think I'm going crazy. And she said, absolutely. She goes, what you're doing is mediumship and you are not going crazy. So, but I still wasn't quite ready because I was still raising my children. I was teaching school full time, and that in itself is, draining. And so with all of that, I thought, you know what? I want to help the kids the best I can. I can use my intuition, which I did, and so that I can help the parents as well. And that's what I'm going to do. And Spirit was with me the whole way. And then, job after job. So first I was a teacher, and then I became an educational diagnostician where I really helped the families and develop programs for their special needs children. And then it kind of led me to becoming a behavior analyst. And that's where, when you talked about the drama, the technology, and the instruction, Spirit just has a way to know how you need to help the children. Even though it wasn't spiritual, I just knew how to put everything together. I had not taken a drama class in my life, but it just made sense to me because the kids were role playing. And then we used the green screen. And back then the green screen was just not really available for everybody.
Mhm.
And it made it so much special for our kids. They just were in awe with it.
Mhm.
And that way they learned their social skill instruction, because that's
Mhm.
what the autism kids population need to work on, is social
Mhm.
skills, right?
Mhm.
And but it was right before COVID. I really felt the need to
Mhm.
come out spiritually and
Mhm.
as a psychic medium. And I told my husband, I said, I'm feeling drawn to it. It's almost like a calling.
Mhm.
You know, I was called to be a teacher, but now I need to kind of be a different kind of teacher in the
Mhm.
spiritual world.
Mhm.
And my husband said, absolutely, let's do it. Or, you know,
Mhm.
when he says let's do it, he's on my team.
Mhm. Right.
And so that's whenever I started taking classes
Mhm.
through Lisa Williams, her
Mhm.
school. During COVID, we would meet online on Zoom.
Mhm.
And, you know, and I learned how to really tune in to my spiritual gifts and to my
Mhm.
intuition and to psychic and mediumship. And I
Mhm.
met so many people that were saying the same thing. You know what? When I was little, my
Mhm.
mom and dad would shut me down because of
Mhm.
either religion or fear or
Mhm.
something in that
Mhm.
area. And one night I was doing mediumship, and I know you probably love mediumship. I mean, not
Mhm.
mediumship, I'm sorry, meditation.
Mhm.
Meditation. And I all of a sudden get download from spirit. And I
Mhm.
just felt like I knew that I needed to write a book and then
Mm.
advocate for these kids
Mhm.
that are very in tuned and very sensitive in that area.
Mhm.
And so what I did is I took what I knew all that year with Lisa Williams and
Mhm.
getting certified through her. I took all those exercises and looked at it as I was teaching a kid. And so
Mm.
that they would have a toolbox and the parents would have a toolbox that they could do with their child together.
Mhm.
And so now that's my new way. And I feel like I'm really being led to also being a psychic medium and just help people heal, and
Mhm.
also help those light workers who need to fulfill their gift and become
Mhm.
their authentic self.
Mhm. Well, this might surprise you. I really don't like to meditate. I don't meditate.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
I am a meditation failure. I've
Oh,
had several meditation gurus try and coach me, and finally it's like, you know what? It doesn't work for me, but what does work for me, I call it meditation through movement.
oh,
That's,
there you go.
and it
Okay.
helps me. I can't just sit still and just kind of try and get into the zone. But if I'm
Right.
moving, then I can. And that's when and where I actually solve a lot of my problems and stuff, is when I'm doing the moving meditation. But, it's not
Right.
for everyone, but everybody has to find their own path, which is exactly what you're helping people do. So I want to go back to when you're talking about spirit, because I think that I just want to clarify it for the audience. And I want to even go back to when you were a little girl and you were hearing like the voices. So was it more than one spirit that was talking to you? Were you able to clarify that? Or was it just, vague and just, vague messages that would pop into your head? What was that like? And were you afraid? I mean, because I think as a child, you start hearing these voices, so, might be looking under the bed or in the closet, who's in my room.
Right, right. And and I love that question. Okay, so whenever I did hear them, it's
Mhm.
almost like, a TV in the other room.
Mhm.
I could hear them, but I could not hear what they were saying. But
Ah.
and they were almost like talking to one another. So it's almost like I had a group. But many times too, I would feel the presence. I couldn't
Mhm.
see them, but
Mhm.
I could feel them. But there again, I was afraid to see them, because
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was dealing with. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so many times my night light would be on. My
Mhm.
grandmother would sleep in the other bed
Mhm.
next to me. My brother would also come in.
Mhm.
So yes, I was afraid because I didn't really understand what it
Mhm.
was. It wasn't them scaring me. They
Mhm.
didn't mean for me to be scared. I was scaring myself.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever it came back in my 20s, it still kind of scared me. But that's when I could really hear the voices in my head, and I could hear what they were saying. And it was my voice. It wasn't, because spirit does not have a voice, so they use your voice. So one time I was watching a movie, just to give you an example, and all of a sudden I had this grandmother come in, and she said, "I want you to tell my granddaughter, that everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay." And it was extremely loud. And I had gone through a couple of classes at the time, so I knew it was, a loved one who has passed on. So I said, "Okay, I will let your granddaughter know. I know who your granddaughter is, but let me watch the movie now." So I had to start giving them boundaries.
I was just going to say that,
Yes.
boundaries at every level, whether it's in, no matter what realm it's in.
Exactly.
So, good for you.
Yeah, because you're like a lighthouse, and it's almost like they want to crash the party because they're there and they're excited. They want to connect in with their loved ones. And so, and whenever your ego is not in the way is when they can really communicate. So like watching TV or trying to go to sleep, that's when they try to communicate. But I've learned how to tune it down. And I kind of say, "Not right now," and I just kind of shut it off. So, but it does take practice to do that.
And I have another question, because it was audible, you heard it.
Yes.
Did you have any visual contact or any, visions or anything like that along the way as well? I'm just really curious about that.
Yeah. Now my visions began, and it was in my third eye. So it's almost like a movie theater. They give you visions that way. It's not outside vision, but everything for me happened inside. Okay. And whenever they communicate, they do. It's so interesting because it's so different. Every spirit communicates differently. So if they're very visual, they'll give me symbols that I understand. And then I have to interpret, well, what does this mean for my client? So then I have to really think, okay, this symbolizes something. But my spirit team and I have really worked with it. And now whenever they do give me symbols or whatever, I know exactly what they're trying to tell me or my client. But I did have a apparition of my daughter whenever I was pregnant with her, before she was even born.
Wow.
So I did have that apparition. So I feel like the apparitions are, anytime spirit communicates with you, there's always a reason. But yes, so I reached out because I saw her, and I reached out, and it's like she disappeared. But I knew, I had that knowledge that it was my daughter that was about to be born.
So did you see her as an infant, as a newborn, or as a child, or as an adult?
As a child.
Okay.
And I want to say she was about 7 or 8 years old. And it's very interesting because I thought she's going to be a tomboy because she was wearing like a baseball cap and
And she is, or she was a tomboy, a little girl.
Wow. So yeah, so and it happens differently. Whatever I'm describing to you, if you are, intuitively, but it's not happening for you that way, it doesn't mean that it's everybody interprets or gets different signals different ways.
Well, it's
we're
like
just
anything
all different.
else. Right.
Yes.
It's like we're individuals.
Absolutely.
And it's just really interesting because I've had two very powerful, visions. My parents both passed away. They were 19 days apart. And I had spent quite a lot of time that last year that they were alive going back and forth to my hometown in Pennsylvania. And, I live here in Denver. And I was there. I was the only one with my mother when she passed away. And I took care of her, home hospice. And it was very peaceful and very, very beautiful and very quiet. And, I was the one, since I was the one taking care of her after she passed away, I always felt like she was right there with me, that she was never gone, really.
Yeah.
And I stayed to take care of my dad, who unfortunately, died, 19 days later. But when he died, it was like, okay, he's gone. But my mother, even though I came back to Denver, and she was just always there. And this went on for several months that I just felt her presence so much. Didn't see her, but I just felt her.
Yeah.
And then it was probably 2 or 3 months after she passed away. And I woke up in the middle of the night and she was standing by my bed. And it was just like this glow around her. And like she was wearing
Oh.
a white robe, which
Uh-huh.
sounds pretty cliche, but,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and she was just looking at me and smiling, and she was stroking my hair and
Hmm.
and it was just so comforting. And it went on forever. It seemed like forever. And
Yeah.
then I woke up in the morning and it was like, oh, that was such a sweet dream and how wonderful. And then I was driving to work later that day and I thought, oh, this means that she's gone. And it was
Oh.
from that moment on, I never had that sense of her really being there. I think that was her final goodbye.
Right. 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 Absolutely. And what a gift.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
gift that she can. And just to let you know too, she's still with you. She just does
Mhm.
not need to make that appearance.
Mhm.
You know,
Well,
like
my father still, I think, is hanging around a lot, and he'll show up in my car when I get in the car in the morning. It's like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Because I could smell his scent,
right.
and
Oh my gosh.
it's
It's
really kind of
wonderful.
crazy stuff, which I don't share with anybody, which is why I'm telling you, and and how many thousands and millions of listeners.
Right. Oh, that is, but thank you for sharing because a lot of people have those experiences, but they're
Hmm.
afraid of it.
Hmm.
And they don't talk about it. And so, with you opening up and sharing your
Hmm.
story, that's going
Hmm.
to allow everybody going, I'm not alone.
Hmm.
That is beautiful.
Well, the other one was really crazy because
Oh, yeah.
it was my husband and I were up in the mountains, which is where I usually go for my happy place and to try and hit the refresh button. And, I loved the mountains. My dad was a skier. He would love to ski. He taught me and my sisters to ski. And we had so many fantastic like ski trips and stuff. I mean, it was just wonderful, fantastic
Mhm.
memories. But anyhow, I was obviously in a really bad mood. It was Father's Day weekend. And
Oh,
so it was the first Father's Day without my dad, just a month
mhm.
after I had my first Mother's Day. And it was like, life can't suck anymore. This is awful. So I was in just a horrible mood. And I was, in the middle of the night, and I sleep on my right side, and I felt my husband poking my left shoulder. And everybody, my family, my husband, everybody knows sleep is sacred to me. You never interrupt me when I'm sleeping. And I thought, I can't believe he's doing this. And I rolled over to yell at him to say, stop poking me. And he was lying on his left side with his back to me, sound asleep and snoring. And I was like, well, that was weird. So when I rolled over to go back onto my right side, I looked and there was my father's face smiling down at me. And it was like, he was trying to tell me, it's okay. You're going to be all right.
Oh, that is awesome. Oh, what another beautiful story.
Yep.
And so you were listening and you were connecting in.
Well, I was wide awake, that's for sure, because
Yeah.
I was so mad at my husband for trying to wake me up. And then it was like, the look on his face, it was so snarky. And because we did have that connection of loving the mountains so much. And it was like, okay, I get it. Thank you. And then every now and again, he still will pop in. And, I don't see him anymore, but it's just, I know he's been there.
And what I love to tell people is whenever they connect in like that, they're giving you a message
Mm-hmm.
because the message is the most important. And you may, you need it, but you've got to
Mm-hmm.
listen to it
Mm-hmm.
before you can move on.
Mm-hmm. So, well, it's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, when you do kind of let I don't want to say your guard down, but your walls or maybe your preconceived ideas about, connecting with the other world or psychic ability or even intuition. And my next question for you is, because of course you've been doing this a very long time. Do you think that, for example, with all of we're going back to the technology, with all of the devices and the technology that we do have at our fingertips and how much we use them, do you feel like that kind of dulls our intuition and our ability to be able to connect and to be open to other, things like, psychic experiences?
Oh, absolutely not. No. Yeah.
No?
Are you talking about technology maybe making us weaker? Is that what you mean? Or,
Dulling our senses.
oh, I say no.
Mhm.
Actually, I think it is technology is a wonderful way that we can actually connect with other people. I
Mhm.
can still do a reading on Zoom
Mhm.
because you're working with energy. Okay.
Mhm.
Energy is energy. So
Mhm.
I don't think that the technology is interfering with it. Sometimes
Okay.
spirit will also shut it down. You'll have like a ghost hunters. Now, this is, kind of an example where
Okay.
the battery is drained.
Mhm.
So they're not going to let it interfere with the connection.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. And now when you use the word spirit, I notice you say spirit, not spirits.
Oh, right. Well,
And
because
so
yes.
go ahead and explain.
Okay, so the reason why I say spirit, because I'm talking about the spiritual world. So
Okay.
my definition, whenever I look at spirit, it's not only the loved ones that I connect in,
Mm-hmm.
that have lived here on earth. It can also be a spirit team that
Mm-hmm.
somebody has, that is with them. It could also be the divine, the
Mm-hmm.
source.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all spirit for me, all the spiritual world. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever I say spirit, sometimes it's not really important where it comes from,
Mm-hmm.
because as long as you're looking at the love and the light, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I a lot of times don't say where it's coming from. Like sometimes I'll be doing a mediumship reading, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
have a spirit guide that pops in. It's like, okay, that's a spirit guide.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like trying to get all this information. So a lot of times I don't tell them where the information is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah,
And since you mentioned love and light,
right.
have you ever had the experience of the other side of that, the dark side of a spirit trying to connect with you?
And I love that question. The more that I started working with tuning in, my
Mm-hmm.
vibration and my frequency
Mm-hmm.
raised up. Okay. Which
Mm-hmm.
means that, and I've already made my intention, I do not want to connect with the
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
lower spirits, because I don't want them to bring me down per se.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But a lot, I got to tell you this one story. One medium was actually doing ghost hunting, going into an old home, and
Mm-hmm.
she was training somebody, and this medium said, oh my gosh, I can see these spirits, can you not see them? And the lady that she was training said, no, I don't see them. And she goes, okay, lower your vibration, lower where you are.
Oh.
And she did, and that's when she could see the spirits in the house, the lower
Uh-huh.
level spirits. So I think if your intention is to see love and light, that's what you will see.
Mm-hmm.
If your intention is see the lower energy, the depression, everything else, you will see that.
Wow, were they able to eliminate that that spirit somehow, or just tune them out, or cut them off, or get them out of
Oh,
the house?
right. Well, for that time, for some reason, they were kind of wanting to connect with that spirit.
Mm,
But if you do feel, and sometimes you can feel a spirit that may, and I don't want to say ill intention, but it's a
mm-hmm,
lower frequency. You
mm-hmm,
can say, you know what? I don't want to talk to you right now. I want love and light spirit, and I want you to go away. And
mm-hmm,
you are in control
mm-hmm,
of the spirit world, and they will go away. Or if you are in like a haunted house and you're doing investigation, they do a lot of prep work. They do a lot of praying and setting the intention before in
mm-hmm,
protection. And then when they leave, they do the same thing and say, all
mm-hmm,
right, spirits, you stay here. We are leaving. You may not attach yourself to me.
mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I recently connected with a young lady here in Denver, and she's much younger than me, but we really hit it off. And we had this fabulous lunch, wonderful conversation. And she told me that, she lived in a haunted house. And I'm like, well, that sounds fascinating. Tell me about it. And I think it happened when she was pregnant with either her first or second child. I can't remember. And she was like, she was feeling all this stuff, and it was really, really, it was really weird. And the family that had lived there before had moved out, in a hurry, or blah, blah, blah. And she says, I wonder if any of them had seen things. So she tried connecting with them and contacting them. And she ended up talking to a son who was a grown man at the time, and said, oh, that's why we left the house. It's definitely haunted. So she actually contacted a medium, and they talked her through how to get rid of the ghost in the house. And so she did it herself, with the assistance of a medium. And she said it was just the craziest thing ever. Because it was definitely not a friendly,
Oh, yeah. And when it's almost like, a challenge. That spirit is saying, I am here first. So this is my territory. And you're going, nope, sorry, it's my territory now. You're not alive anymore.
Okay, so this is going to go way out on a tangent. And please, reel me in if you feel like it. It's okay.
No worries.
I won't be offended, because this is going back to, where I was raised. My father, it's a small steel town outside of Pittsburgh in Western Pennsylvania. My father actually built the house that I grew up in. I mean, with his hands, he actually built it himself. And it was the second house he built. He built one house that was smaller. And then, somebody made him an offer for it that was just outrageous. And he looked at my mother and said, I'll just build you another one. So they took the money and built a bigger house on top of the hill. Well, I have 4 sisters. And the 3 of us older girls, there were 3 of us in 4 years. And we shared the same bedroom, the corner bedroom in the house. And we didn't realize it until we were all adults and started talking about the man in the hallway. And all 3 of us had seen it. The oldest sister was kind of vague about it, but me and the other older sister were very clear about it. And then, 5 years after I was born, 5 years later, another sister, and then 9 years later, another sister, and each one of the younger ones too had felt this. It is right in the hallway, in that one bedroom where the 3 of us little girls used to sleep. And then, of course, more bedrooms and more, girl energy. But it was so strong that my mother felt it too. And she even, as we were starting to talk about it when we were teenagers, and like, you knew that too? I thought maybe it's just me. I didn't want to say anything, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah. So my mom did a little bit of research, and was talking about how, like, she was calling them poltergeists that, would attracted to young women, or not women, but, young girls. It was just that was the magnet or whatever. But anyway, after my mother passed away and I was still staying at the house with my dad, and he told me, he says, go home, go back to Denver. And I'm like, I knew it wasn't going to be long, but I said, well, I'll just stay here with you. No, he insisted. I said, okay. So I went upstairs, and I'm in that bedroom, and I was packing, and I was like, okay, I did a good job. I'm proud of myself. I did the best I could. I took care of him. I did my job. And all of a sudden this wind came through the room. Now this is in November, so the windows were closed. There was, and it was so strong, it actually lifted my hair.
Wow.
And I thought, okay. And it was cold. And I says, well, that's weird. And I thought, my father passed away. And I figured he died, sent me upstairs to go packing. And that's when he passed away. So I went downstairs, and there he was, snoring on the recliner. It's like, okay. And then it wasn't until several days later that I realized, I wonder if that was whatever it was leaving the house, because they knew, or it knew, its time there was done.
Oh, wow. And you know what? When you were telling me your story, do you think the man in the hallway that y'all could really feel, do you think he was like a protector?
We were always found it very, like threatening.
Right.
And like very, what's the word? I can't remember. I can't remember, but yeah, it was threatening and very sinister.
Okay.
However, we were such little girls, and that would freak anybody out. But but I think because it couldn't be a haunted house because my father built it.
Right.
And then,
go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, but you don't know what happened on the land that it was on.
Exactly. And this is in Western Pennsylvania, very rich history with, the Revolutionary War and all that kind of stuff. Or was this somebody that, my dad and my grandmother brought over from Eastern Europe when they came? Who knows what it was? But, when that happened, and it was just, I want to go back and just knock on the door of the people who bought the house and say, hey, did anything happen here? But I do. I feel like it was someone who was looking over us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because when you were telling the story, I kept hearing he was a protector,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how he showed his
Mm-hmm.
protection, is kind of that stronger, the energy, that you get
Mm-hmm.
from daddy bears
Mm-hmm.
protecting their young. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of feeling.
Which is really crazy
Yeah,
because that's exactly what my father was too.
right.
Definitely daddy bear. I mean, no one messed with his girls. My goodness, I had to move to Denver to get a date, when I was 21.
Well, who knows? He could be coming through too. So.
That's right. That's pretty funny. Okay, so one of the things that I was really curious about when I looked at
Mhm.
your YouTube channel was the energy ball and creating an
Oh,
energy ball.
yes.
And I think
Yes.
a lot of people don't really understand, what energy means and what energy is. And you even already talked about a little bit when you're talking about the vibrations, higher vibration, lower vibration. But this idea of an energy ball, I found really intriguing. And I intentionally did not click on it because I wanted to hear you talk about it today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, it's very interesting, because whenever I was working with energy, you can feel you can feel your energy, which is your
Mhm.
aura. Okay.
Mhm.
And it gives out a lot of energy. Everybody has energy, even
Mhm.
things have energy.
Mhm.
But whenever I knew that there was energy or a spirit in the room and I could feel that different energy, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, I don't understand it all. But whenever I started yoga, okay, that's when I started really understanding, because anytime we would do those poses, I
Uh-huh.
could feel the energy. And
Uh-huh.
then the same yoga class that in the same place, we did meditation. So
Uh-huh.
we would do the yoga first, okay, to
Uh-huh.
get that energy really moving and we could really feel it. And then when we sat in meditation, I would work with the energy.
Mhm.
And you can just, if you get your two hands
Mhm.
together, you can
Mhm.
feel the energy
Mhm.
between the palms of your
Mhm.
hands, and you can just kind of mess around with it.
Mhm.
And that way, whenever you're and I love to tell people this, whenever you're trying to protect yourself from somebody else that's really angry and you're going, I don't want your energy, you can actually put up a glass wall and
Mhm.
pull in your energy. And
Mhm.
then if you're healing with somebody, if you feel like you want to give them love and you
Mhm.
want to send them that beautiful energy because they need it that day,
Mhm.
then you can actually send them some of your energy and
Mhm.
do an intention, say, I send you love. And you
Mhm.
don't have to do it where they're seeing your hands or anything. You can
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
think about your energy going towards them.
Mhm.
Like, if where we are right now,
Mhm.
if I can actually send you energy
Mhm.
over the internet,
Mhm.
and in class we would practice our bringing our energy back and forth.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so
So
the palms of my hands are really tingling right now, just so you know.
yeah, and I found out, which I didn't know what was happening, because during meditation,
Mhm.
my palms would burn, and that's
Uh-huh.
just my frequency raising and my energy really messing around.
Uh-huh.
So before I do any type of reading, or if I use cards,
Mhm.
whenever I do a psychic reading, I always put my energy, always heat up my palms so
Mhm.
that I can really use that energy to heal people.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt that same sensation or that energy in the soles of your feet?
Absolutely.
Okay, because that's where I get it most of the time, in
Okay.
the soles of my feet, and it's like,
Yeah.
what have I been doing today? I think, did I take a ballet class? Did I, it's like,
Right.
no, it's just heating up and just feeling it's just a really interesting sensation.
It is. And I also tell people you can start by seeing auras too. You can get your two fingers together and
Hmm.
kind of look past them, and you can see
Hmm.
that string of energy.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
and that practice is looking at people's auras.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. And a lot of this also relates to my martial arts and
Oh,
in the
right.
martial art that I study, because it's an ancient Japanese martial art. It's
Mhm.
considered one of the softer arts, which I don't really quite get that. I kind of do and kind of don't. But we do work a lot we talk about training our spirit. And that
Mhm.
was one of the reasons why I was asking about that earlier. Your inner spirit, the warrior spirit. So it's definitely, growing your
Right.
own energy and your strength. And we also, using your energy even to take down an attacker,
Right.
and a
Right.
lot of times you don't even have to touch a person. You can just take them down with your energy.
Well, and to give you an example too, you got to be real careful when you work with your energy. One time I was doing an exercise with a medium on Zoom, and he got really emotional because his mother was coming through and he got triggered and all this anger came out. And I mean, I could feel it.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, so you can zap somebody with your anger energy. And I said, you know what? I didn't think I needed to protect myself, but maybe I said, you need to kind of back off your, I had to stop him because it was so strong.
Wow.
I said, one, you've got great, strong energy. Good for you. But,
but turn it off.
Then back off a little bit. Okay. So I can finish the reading. And then you could see him calming down, you know, that type of thing. Also, when one other example, when I would work with my kiddos with autism and they would have the meltdowns, I would use my energy to help calm them.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, even when the times, you know, when my mom and dad were both dying at the same time, and when I was home in Denver, you know, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, of course, worried and concerned, and, you know, because they were so far away and because, you know, there were some undesirable elements hanging around the house every now and again. And I mean, real people, you know, not spirit, you know, and I would just worry so much, but it's like I couldn't be there 24/7, you know, the entire time. And I would just, and I don't know where I got this from, but I don't know if it was just to comfort me or make me feel a little bit better, but I would just, in my mind, when I would lay there, I would just put this like cloud all around the house, and it was this, you know, soft blue cover or color, and it was almost like a protective layer that even from this distance, 1,500 miles away, I was trying to give them that level of protection that nobody would be able to penetrate.
And that is awesome. Yeah. I mean, and I think once, because a lot of times people are afraid to work with their energy, but it's nothing to be afraid of because we all have it. And, you know, and it's very interesting that I still have my grandfather's wallet and I love to feel it because I can feel his energy on his wallet.
Yeah. That's interesting because I had my Serbian grandfather, my mom's dad, his wallet for a very long time, and then my grandmother's as well. And a few years ago, I gave him to a niece and a nephew so they could have it. But I would be able to just smelling the wallet, you know, and it was like my grandfather was right there. And of course, he died a real long time ago. But in my house and even downstairs here in my girl cave, I have a lot of my grandmother's furniture on the Slovak side. So my dad's mom, have a lot of her stuff. Even if you can kind of see in that corner of the screen, you can just see that was something that she had done when she was a little girl in Czechoslovakia. And so, yeah, I mean, I have an entire bedroom upstairs that's just all of her furniture.
That's nice. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It just makes me feel so good to see it and touch it. And of course I have things from my other grandmother. I've got her Bible and I've got a couple of other things too. So it's just nice to have those things.
It really is, especially if you want to spend a few minutes with the memories. Yeah. You know, it's really nice to have that. It really is. And I know that you were wanting to talk about spirit art.
Yes.
Yeah. Because what reminded me is when you're looking back behind you. Okay. So spirit, you know, art has always been a big impact in my life. My grandmother, my grandfather, they were both artists. I never took an art class. I tried and I just wasn't patient. I said, I can't do this, you know, that type of thing. But whenever I started working with spirit and whenever I did my mediumship, whenever I would use paints and colors and everything, I opened up. I was able to receive the information so much more. And it's almost like a type of channeling, you know, the automatic writing. And so what I would do is I learned how to do a portrait. And when I say portrait, it's a likeness. Okay. It's not, because I only have like 30 minutes. And so, the spirit, the loved one would tell me how they wanted to look like on paper. So as I'm doing the reading, I would be talking to them and doing their eye color, doing their hair. And now I don't have to do that. I mean, it's kind of like an addition now, but now I open up without having to do that. But I love to create art and have spirit come in and help me get a message out with whatever picture I draw or doodle or whatever. And color is the most important thing to look at, the symbolism. Why did I use the color red? Why did I use the color blue? And I think there's so many artists out there that actually do channel into the spirit world, but they may not realize it.
Okay, that brings me to another question then. Do you believe that the spirit world does interact with us constantly? It's just that we might not even be aware of it. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I kind of thought that was the answer.
Absolutely. Oh, and now because I'm tuned in, I'll be doing something and I'll hear no, and I'll go, okay. And so I'll stop doing it and do it a different way. And I know that was the correct way. But, again, you got to remember, even though that they're here and they try to, it's like if you had a mother who was very controlling, she's going to try to control you as a spirit because that's her personality. That's who she is, her soul is, right? So, and that's how you remember her. So she might still be a little bossy, but you've got to remember, this is your life. They can only guide you, but you don't have to listen. You've got the free will, and you can say, I'm not going to do that. Now, many times when I do that, though, I'm going, I should have listened. I should have listened the first time, because a lot of times it will get you out of danger, because if you're driving down the road and you hear stop, you need to stop and you need to listen to that voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a few of those moments too. And unfortunately did not listen. Yeah. But that brings me to another story of my family. And because of course, being Eastern European, it was my great grandmother. And, she was walking, I guess, through a village one evening. She was visiting a neighbor and it got dark. She stayed later than she had anticipated. And as she was walking home, she saw a man like in front of her at the distance, or in a distance. And he was just looking at her, and he was just like, waving at her, and scared her to death. And, she just didn't know what to do. So she just fell down to her knees and started to pray. And then she was there all night on her knees praying. And then when, the dawn came and she could see, because I guess it was foggy and dark and everything.
Oh, right.
When she could see again, the area that they lived in had a ton of canals and waterways and stuff around them. She was heading right directly toward a canal.
Oh, wow. So she was in danger.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That man stopped her.
Right.
But, she didn't realize it until, when she saw that she would have been dead. She would have fallen into the canal and drowned.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, I think it's beautiful, because it makes you realize there are miracles out there that we don't know what is around us all the time. Even though we don't see it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So to me, it's just so inspiring to hear these stories from you.
And what about, the saying that, piercing the veil, and it's, there really is no veil.
Right. Right. And that is exactly right. Because when they say the veil, I always think, what? It just means that there is a line between, the spiritual world and us. But is it really there? But yeah, you're right. I think a lot of people tend to say, oh, don't lift that veil, don't open the door. It's like, well, the door's already open.
Yeah, right. Too late.
I mean, what will be will be. That's why we exist the way that we do.
Well, and I want you to just touch on the energetic transformation, because that was another thing that I saw, that it was, very interesting to me. What you mean by an energetic transformation, and is this something that you teach your clients, or that you work with people so they can have that shift in energy to help them heal? Because all of this, everything we're talking about, does have to do with healing, and it's spiritual healing, which there are so many, physical ailments that you can heal from through this type of spiritual energy.
Oh, absolutely. And yes, I do talk to my clients about it. because the number one thing that I want to do is help heal others, spiritually, mentally, physically, because your soul, is perfect the way it is. But because the way that we think and our energy just drops down and we don't do anything about it. Now, I do get clients that just want the answer, especially with psychic reading. I just want to know, is my boyfriend coming back, without the healing? So, but I always send them, before I even do reading, I always send them that great energy, and send them that energy so that they can feel it whenever they're with me, and try to slip in something. You know what? You may want to really take good care of yourself. Look at the spiritual aspect. What are you learning from this relationship? So, but you're right. They have to invite the magic in, like the spiritual transformation. And again, it's their choice to invite it in or not. But I think as healers, all we can do is kind of help guide them and just send them that love and light energy.
Love that you brought that up, because this is another little segue when you're talking about, energy in a relationship and how the people you hang around with can really either help lift you up or just absolutely suck the life out of you. And, when you go out with a friend and you come home, you just feel so, energized and uplifted and just so light. And compare that to another friend when you come home and it feels like somebody just drained every ounce of your blood and left nothing left for you.
Right. And it makes you wonder why people have these relationships or get in that cycle of, getting in a relationship where it's abusive. And, and they're saying, why do I keep finding men that will abuse me? Well, now this, I don't know, people believe in reincarnation, but a lot of times you choose the spirit, the people, the souls that you'll be with and you live through your lifespan with, so that you learn certain lessons. And sometimes you choose those relationships, even if they're abusive, to have a lesson from it. Maybe you need to love yourself more. Maybe you need to forgive yourself more, or the person that's abusing you. So there will be a lesson in every relationship. And the cycle may happen, keep going until you decide to do something about it.
And make a change.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, but I just feel like, we are here to learn. And sometimes the lessons, life isn't supposed to be easy. People think that it's going to be all happy and cheery and everything. And you look at Jesus and how he lived and everything. It wasn't very chipper. And his disciples, they died terribly. So we are here to love one another and definitely to learn these lessons. And I always tell people too, because we're empaths and we work on our energy, a lot of times you will have a negative person that the frequency is really low that you'll attract, and they'll be here. I'm right here, and they're kind of mean and they're awful to you. And just give that love back. Just push that energy back and just say, you are where you are, because a lot of times they may be asking for help, in their own way. And again, let them move on. Say that is not for me. It's time for you to move on. And sometimes that's easy to say, though, depending on your relationship.
Well, I had to do that with a friend of mine of 30 years.
Yes.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, how do you tell somebody you've been best and dearest friends with for 30 years that you haven't liked them for the past 15 and been trying to figure out a way to break up with them for the past 10? Then it's time. Just cut that cord. Let them go.
And sometimes that's a good lesson for them, because maybe that will wake them up. Go, what did I, and if they don't know it was partially them as well, then it's definitely time to move on.
Yeah. Well, I don't think she had that level of self-awareness.
Yes,
but that's okay.
That's why I stopped myself, because she may not know that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So tell us about your books. How did that come about? Whatever possessed you to write the first one in the first place? Because, as an author myself, I know that is kind of like a big, big decision, and it's not always easy.
And exactly. And I think while I became specialized in the autism realm,
Mhm.
and my own children actually grew up because they both had red hair. I have three, but two with red hair, and they had an agent, and so they were on commercials or whatever. They went through drama, and I don't know how. I think God gives us opportunities so that we go, you know what? I learned that for a reason. So
Mhm.
whenever it just like the light came on, and I'm going, there's nothing like this that's out there,
Mhm.
where we can, especially when you're looking at social skills, there's nothing out there that integrates drama, technology, and
Mhm.
also instruction.
Mhm.
And with all three of that, and the kids need to have fun, because a lot of times teaching social skills, people will just give them a worksheet and say,
Ugh.
okay, let's fill this out. And it's like, no, I mean, it's good to have a lesson, but then you need to
Mhm.
learn it, do the role playing, and it brings out creativity. I mean, they
Mhm.
loved, I mean, getting out costumes, and we would have fun. I mean, not only
Mhm.
would we do reality, but then they would be able to create and
Mhm.
really show their true selves. And they felt
Mhm.
really good. And they thought they were going to drama
Aw.
because I did put the drama mask, and it was
Mhm.
called IACES Learning
Mhm.
Center, which
Mhm.
stands for Imagination and Social Instruction Station. So they thought they
Oh.
were only coming for drama, which is perfect. That's
Mhm.
how I would address it.
Mhm.
Now, with the latest book, again, I just felt like I was being drawn.
Mhm.
And there were a couple of books out similar to it, but not enough.
Mhm.
And so I feel like, and my editor, she said, well, have you done your research? Is what is really needed? And I said, I did my research. There's not really any books that I can compare with, but I feel like it's needed. I feel,
Mhm.
you just know as a writer and an author that you need to share it, not
Mhm.
only for me, but for everybody out there, because I
Mhm.
felt like this was not only coming from me, but somebody else that's saying,
Mhm.
yes, the spirit world needs to connect with us here.
Mhm.
So it's not about me whenever I write it. It's
Mhm.
advocating for these kids that need
Mhm.
to have their life improved, or they know that, there's so much more fun out there and such creativity to know about themselves. And
Mhm.
it's interesting that you also compare, when we were looking at both of the books,
Mhm.
art is involved. When we're
Mhm.
talking about psychic art
Mhm.
is involved, because I feel like art is like the gateway to the soul. That's
Mm.
how we express ourselves.
Mhm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, how can people find you, or where can they find you, and how can they get a hold of you? And where can
Okay.
they find your books? I'm going to have, of course, all the links on
All
the
right.
show notes, of course, but I always like for the guests to be able to articulate that themselves.
Okay. Well, the first thing I always tell everybody, go to my website, because that tells them about everything, and it gives them link to Facebook and YouTube and everything.
Mhm.
So it's www.michellehendersonmedium.com.
Mhm.
And both of the books can be found on Amazon.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you so much. This has been a very enlightening and inspirational conversation. You just never know where it goes.
I know,
And
I know. That's why I never really plan things out. Some of my guests will say, send me a list of questions. And it's like, that's never going to happen because,
right.
when you just have a nice organic conversation, a lot of stuff comes up. And I've told you some things I've probably never told anybody else before. And now I've not only told you, I've told millions of people. So,
And we thank you for that.
well, you're welcome.
It's hard
Okay.
to be vulnerable. It really is.
Oh, tell me. I know. And I'm one of these people that prides myself on being, very private, outgoing, but
Yes.
private. And
Yes.
when my second book, oh my gosh, when that was published, I had 3 really rough weeks because I felt like I just stripped myself down to absolutely nothing. I was naked walking down the street for everybody to see everything. And took
Oh,
about three
okay.
weeks before I finally got over it. And it's like, it's okay. It's okay. You can't get the genie back in the bottle, but it was very well received. And so it's okay.
Good. Well, and you need to share that part of yourself, because again, people are going to learn from you.
Yeah, that's true. But then you talked about your editor and my editor. I always tell people that your editor is kind of like, your confessor, your priest, your therapist, your very best friend, and your worst nightmare all at the same time. Yes. And
Absolutely.
she would always say to me, because I don't like to talk about my emotions, I like to pretend I don't have any. And she would always say, well, what were you feeling internally when this was happening? And what, and it's like, okay, I wanted to take a baseball bat to his head, not reveal what I was feeling at the time.
Right.
No, the readers want to know more. It's like, oh God. So yeah, it was tough.
But you know what? She got it out of you in a fantastic way so that you could share.
And, talk about, spirit and energy and all this crazy stuff that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on my next book, and I was like really in a stuck spot, and I'm going, maybe I ought to call Donna. Maybe I ought to call Donna. And I got a text from her this morning that said, hey, are you, available for lunch sometime this month? I would love to connect. It was like, okay, someone was listening. So yeah,
absolutely.
Someone's always listening.
That's true. And I have people go, well, do they go to the bathroom with you if you're going to? And I'm going, does it really matter?
Yeah,
they're not going to judge you.
It doesn't matter to me. I actually walked down the street naked after I, wrote that book. So anyhow, well, Michelle, it has been absolutely delightful talking to you. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for all of your insights and your wisdom. This has just been absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. This was really a wild ride. It's kind of like out of the realm of what I typically do. But wow, what an interesting conversation. And just remember, there really is no veil. And someone is always watching and listening. But don't let it freak you out. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.